What is going on, guys? We are back on the LS Skyline. We are doing a bunch of stuff. Got the Sikky Headers that you saw in one of the previous videos. Got a Texas Speed cam, big boy. I'm working on the brake lines for the ABS delete. We're going to hammer out the trans tunnel, install a Hirsch short shifter, all kinds of stuff. A lot of stuff going on. So let's get right to it. So right there is all the old ABS stuff. That part was over near the master cylinder, and it was all right here. So got rid of a ton of lines going across and then some going back across. And we're just going from the master cylinder straight down to the rear, and then this line here, one of them is, this line here is going to go here, and then it branches off to the two fronts, and it'll be a much cleaner setup. This is the vent, which I'm just going to probably put a loop or something and get that out of the way. And he's got a nice clean firewall, looks way better. And Grant did the liberty of tearing the motor down a bit so we can get the cam kit in. New valve springs, obviously a new cam. Don't remember exactly what else, but got a bunch of stuff moved out of the way, and we could start putting the good stuff on. So we're doing a Mishimoto radiator and fan setup, and I got that all bolted together. I wasn't exactly sure, and by exactly sure, I mean I had no fucking clue how the bolts went, because nothing made sense, except I just kind of did this and it worked a little bit. So I did the weird countersunk bolt, and then the washer underneath because there was a space, and then the lock washer just bent and I just left it out. So I guess that'll do. Here is the old camshaft, which is probably worth some money because it's an LS6 cam. The trunnion upgrade, which has a funny name, but those are basically the rocker arm pivot points, and those are a common weak area. And then we got the dual valve springs in on that side. Got the new camshaft in, which you can't tell, but we didn't do the timing because it's fine, low mileage engine. And here is my setup to do the valve springs and retainers. Basically, this piece I made, this is a long, fully threaded bolt with a nut on it. Basically, you just tighten this one in, tighten that one to lower the spring compressor, along with some rope in the cylinder to hold the valves up. And I use one socket to remove the valve guide seal, just hammer it on and then it picks it up. And then a slightly larger socket to hammer it in place, and a little cup of oil to make sure they're nice and lubricated before you do any of that. And then you just go through and put all your new Johnnies in there. Pretty simple. Corey bolted on the Sikky header on this side and then partially bolted it on the other side because we're not sure if we're going to need that on there or not. And then we're going to cut that tab off the trans and hammer the trans tunnel, and then toss the motor back in there. Just yeet it on in. So now the motor is back together. All of the dual valve springs are in, camshaft in, got all of the new stuff up front. It was a massive pain in the ass to get this in here. It was terrible. So we had to fully drop the subframe. Not fully, but like all 4 bolts off of the subframe. We had to take the steering U-joint off of the rack and pull the steering shaft out of the way. We dropped the motor in with that header on, but not this header. Once the motor was halfway, or like 3/4 of the way in, we snaked this header in there. Corey was underneath, I was up top, finessing it. It was terrible.
Out for blood on this car.
Yeah,
Injured me.
Corey got injured. Corey's currently working on installing the Hirsch short shifter that we got, that Asher got. And then, yeah, once the motor was up, but not all the way up, we bolted the header to the engine, snaked the steering shaft in. We got the steering shaft hooked to the steering rack, and then lifted the motor, or the subframe back in, and then we dropped the motor onto that. It was a very complicated process. We also had to pull this off. It would have been slightly easier, but not like entirely, if we pulled this valve cover, but not entirely necessary unless you already have the valve cover off, then just leave it off for now. Of course, you saw we had to trim that guy, which doesn't even look entirely necessary, but it made it way easier to get the engine in the car. Oh, wait, never mind. We'll lose clearance. The transit's down right now, so that clearance will go away. It's there. It's in there. Hopefully this is the final time. It's very close, but it's not hitting one of the runners on the QuickTime bell housing. Could use a little bit of hammering, but currently it's clear, so it's good enough. And it's coming along, almost ready to party. So right now I am working on a mount bracket for the remote oil filter. Doing this out of aluminum, 14 gauge. Just CNC cut these and then just chase the holes with the drill. Make them look pretty. Some more holes there. Giving it an old school look because that's what Asher likes. So now I'm going to TIG weld it up and clean her up from there. And here is the finished product for the oil filter mount. Basically, I mounted it on the tension rod bracket there, and there was already holes. I just drilled them a little bit larger and threw some riv nuts in there, so it's nice and secure. Lines are going to be running off of there over to down there with the Canton oil. Came with the remote oil filter kit. So we're going to have to snake some lines and probably throw some heat shielding on them for the headers. But it is super serviceable. You can get to the oil filter from here or from the bottom. You got full room, even more room underneath than you do up top. So that'll work. And we've finally gotten down to where we can write a reasonable list on the windshield. So fuel lines, heat shield for fuel lines, oil line, heater hose, radiator hose, got to get a MAF and the housing, booster hose reducer, clutch line, alternator and starter bolts, and then an oil pressure sensor for an R32. And that's about it. And right now I am in my wood room, my dust room. Got some of my dad's snow skate blanks waiting to be cut, but got my jigsaw or bandsaw here, the little wood one, and we just cut the Corvette cover to fit around the Willwood Brake Master and then or Clutch Master, and then all of the brake lines and the raised coil pack, which I'll show you. And just like that, clicks in place. Nice clearance there. What do you got to say, Corey? How's that taste?
Tastes like America.
So we had to raise and sort of shift this coil pack a little bit to get it out of the way of the brake booster. We could have used the slimmer, like manual, non-ABS, whatever brake booster it is. And that might have given us the clearance, but this worked just as well. And then there's that bolt that we cut. We had to trim the ignition coil bracket. But between all of that, ignition coil is in place and it clears there. And then the cover goes on. And boom, it's like OEM, but better. Then the fuel line comes out there, just right to there. It's gonna be super clean. What? Yeah, they know.
That makes my pee-pee happy.
So we got a couple other things wrapped up. I welded this bung to the radiator. Oh, let me focus on that. So I welded this bung to the radiator, and that is for going to the steam pipe right there. Basically, it just helps get the air out of the system. So that's necessary. Not sure of another way to do it, but that was easy. Asher ordered some radiator hoses from Mishimoto for an S13. They should work pretty well for us, maybe slight modifications. I figured out all of the hoses for fuel, not for power steering because those are going to be confusing. Whichever other ones we needed. Oh, oil, boom, oil, fuel, something else. Brake booster vacuum line. We're getting an adapter to go from 1/2 inch to a 3/8, and then we're just going to run a little 3/8 tube, maybe over back to here, just so it'll be nice and tucked. And then also down there, which you're not going to be able to see, I installed the wiring special. Down there, you can't see it, but I installed the wiring specialties coolant something adapter, coolant temperature adapter to use the factory coolant temperature gauge, and then snaked the wire back over in this harness. And then we still need the oil pressure sensor, which goes right down there. And then both of those will adapt into the factory gauges, and that'll be super sweet. Now inside the car here, you can see the massive factory ECU. We got that all wired in and all the wires tucked into here. We're probably going to have to trim this kick panel a little bit, and then we're just going to mount the ECU right there, and then should just tuck the carpet right over it, and that'll be fine. It's not a big deal if that gets kicked, as long as the wires don't get messed with. So that's good right there. Still waiting on the seat brackets so we can get the seats mounted up in place, and then it's almost ready to party. And that is all for this video on Asher's LS6 R32. Hopefully in the next video we will have the first start up and maybe even take it for a drive. The drive shaft will be here tomorrow. I can go get the lines that I was just talking about whenever, so it'll be very soon. Stay tuned.